Hi, everyone. This is Jenny Graham from the Tulsa World Opinion section. I'm the editorials editor.
I'm Bob Doucette, editorial writer and columnist.
And this is our weekly podcast and video. So if you want to, with this video, if you want to hear it instead of watch it, you can go to Apple, Google, Spotify, and download it. So this is an interesting week. The legislature, which is the dominant news of the day, because they're doing something every day. I think Bob and we were talking earlier, we sort of thought that the culture war era phase of the legislature was over. I mean, the abortion ban bill last week made national attention. People who have fought for abortion for a long time were very happy, but we thought that was sort of the end of that. But then the State Powers Committee, which I wasn't that familiar with, they pushed through Senate Bill 0615, keeping that alive. And what that does, there was an amendment added by Danny Williams of Seminole that has school counselors concerned. And what it does is it would require, if passed, for kids that meet with their counselors in school on anything related to sex, sexual identity, they're having sex, their attitudes about sex, anything with the word sex in it, before a counselor could provide counsel, provide materials, provide anything, the counselor would have to go to the kid's parents to get permission and have them review any resources. Mm-hmm. So that's a bad idea because it stifles a person a kid might need as a resource. That, first of all, you have counselors that are then in situations where they're outing their kids to their parents, and the parent might be part of the problem. What do you think, Bob? I mean, you've heard me on these rants, but what is it about Oklahoma lawmakers not feeling weird about sex?
Well, if it was only confined to the state of Oklahoma.
That's true.
This is a trend, and it's a wide trend. It's going through many states, many red states. We talked about this a little bit, probably about a month or so ago, and I'll just repeat something I said back then that it sounds kind of harsh, but I think that's what it is. We're seeing an effort between the Don't Say Gay laws that are being that are now on the books in Florida, and the stuff that we're doing here and some other states, that it kind of looks like you're seeing a push to shove all of the LGBTQ plus folks right back in the closet. It's like, all right, gay marriage happened and 8 years of that. Now we're just going to pretend all of it didn't happen and whisk you all away in places that you will not be seen. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that actually works, because once the genie's a little bit out of the bottle now, so it's kind of late to do that kind of stuff in the climate of the country the way it is.
Well, they're certainly not reading the tea leaves among the youth, because the youth that I'm around, I have two teenagers. It is just not the issue that some of these lawmakers are making it to be. They just view it differently. And to me, the whole goal when you have kids, yes, you want your kids to come to you if they're having sex, but even in the most loving homes with understanding parents, teenagers often do not tell their parents when they're having sex. Yeah. So that conversation has to start well before then. So when the kids are making that decision, they know your values, they know where to get resources, they know all that. And then the other issue is the LGBTQ issue that, like I say, I know kids that came from great parents and loving families, but they were so scared to talk to their parents about it that sometimes the parents were the last to know. And in those situations I'm thinking of, it worked out fine. Their parents were accepting and loving and advocates, but that's not the case in all situations. So, ideally, yes, you want parents to have these conversations with their kids, but sometimes they won't. So why cut off legally a way for them to get help. And mental health, I mean, we have a youth suicide crisis and epidemic
Yes.
in Oklahoma right now. Why would we hamstring school counselors in any way?
Especially with that demographic, because that's where it hits the hardest. And look, just talking as base level and real as we can about this from a cultural standpoint, I understand that some parents are not going to be happy if they find out their child is gay. There's going to be pressure put to bear by peers and things like that. If folks think that this is what we do now, it's going to make us harder on a smaller group of people, a more vulnerable group of people. I don't really see a good outcome out of that, because you can preach and teach all you want to, but I mean, just the way it is, some people are going to be the way they are, and to deny that, at the very least, just strictly speaking from a just getting to know your neighbor standpoint, at the very least, you're denying people a little bit of their dignity. And at the worst, you could be encouraging and turbocharging self-destructive behavior if folks don't think they'll ever be accepted or loved or wanted by the people they're surrounded by.
Right.
So on the issue of sex, again, what is the most likely outcome? The ever optimistic people will say, well, we'll just teach our children to save themselves for marriage and to value sex as something just for that institution, and it'll be just like what you say. Sure, there will be some youth who adhere to that. There will be other youth who are going to be sneaking around doing whatever it is folks do without maybe the knowledge that they have, that they need to be safe, to be healthy, to not get people pregnant, to not get pregnant. Ignorance is not bliss in that kind of a situation. It can cause a lot of trouble. There are not a lot of 14, 15, 16-year-old kids who are ready to be parents. I would say that number is probably in the low single digits.
Yeah. And, just for me, when I see these kind of things, I always sort of wondered and worried after abortion. Now that abortion is banned in Oklahoma, and that, there's that victory there for the folks who wanted that. But what's
social
next?
Conservatives.
Yeah. I have really worried about what's the next target, because I fear it's going to be contraception. I fear it's going to be sex, it's access, contraception and access and information, sex education. And Danny Williams on the floor debating this said if it was up to him, he would eliminate all sex ed from schools, all of it. So that's backwards. And so that's what I'm a little on guard about that. So we'll, keep going. It'll come back.
It won't help. It won't help.
Yeah. Sure. So the other thing that happened was there's filings going on. Started yesterday, continues through Friday. A lot of, big midterm elections. I didn't see any surprises yet. I did see some crowded races. The congressional race for Mark Wayne Mullins' old seat. I mean, I don't know. There's like 8 Republicans running or something, and like no Democrats yet. So that's going to be crowded. Anything, Steph? Any thoughts from you yet on this? I mean, I'm kind of waiting to see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, I think tomorrow will be the last big rush of people to sign up and things. You wonder if there's going to be like a teachers caucus part 2 or something like that.
Yeah, we'll just kind of see, but it's going to be, there are going to be some interesting races out there. So
what I'm looking forward to, just from a spectator standpoint, is the gubernatorial race. So everyone kind of had this thing that, Governor Stitt, he'll have a lot of conservative backing, walk in the park. Joy Hoffmeister threw a little bit of a monkey wrench into the works. Still thinking that Stitt's still the favorite, but at least you got someone with a statewide name recognition that can possibly give him a run. And then Joel Kent still shows up.
He was interesting. That's going to be an interesting.
Yep.
That will be interesting.
Shows up as a Republican. He's director of the State Department of Veteran Affairs. He's not really a rhino type. And boy, he had some words.
Yeah,
He had some words.
The
They were
Republican
sharp.
primary got interesting this past week.
Yes, it did. So it's going to get spicy. And, obviously, I think Stitt's going to come out of that. He's going to win, but he's going to take a few bruises and stuff like that. And that sets up, whoever wins the Democratic nomination. I think we're all thinking Hoffmeister will probably pull that off.
Connie Johnson has her followers.
Oh, she does. She does. I agree. I'm just kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit. But yeah, right. This could, at the last gubernatorial race between Edmondson and Stitt, it was kind of low key. It didn't really seem like there was a lot of heat in that one. I think there was more heat in the primary than there was in the general. And I'm not going to say the primary was that hot. I wonder about it this time.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be an interesting way it plays out. Well, some of our editorials this past week just hit some of the highlights. One of the ones was this bill that would allow, and I thought, we're actually publishing it on Monday, but it's a bill that House Bill 3351, I believe. I thought it would be dead by now, but it's still alive and it's concerning. It would give parents for parents who give a donation directly to a teacher, they get of up to $1,000, they get a tax credit for up to $1,000, which is so rife with problems. I don't even know where to begin. I thought it would be dead by now. So the fact that it's still alive and got passed out of a committee, it passed the House, got to the Senate, passed out of committee. And the problems are, first of all, that's no way to fund teacher pay, because that's what this is about. It's an attempt to think outside the box on how we can get more pay to teachers. The reality is this creates a huge divide between the have and have-nots, because if you go into a wealthy area, let's just say Bixby, where they have the per capita income is so much wider than, say, an East Tulsa school, where maybe everyone is on free and reduced lunch. So a teacher is thinking, well, if I went to Bixby, the likelihood is, and I have a class of 25 kids, all those parents might be inclined to donate to me. No one's going to want to teach in the East Tulsa where you can't even get resources, much less direct donations. So that may not be, that's going to be in the back of a teacher's mind, that
smoke and mirrors policy too.
It's just the divide between the have and have nots on equity is just, it would be astounding. The other issue is that it just compromises teachers. Talk to any football coach about dealing with overzealous parents who want their kid to have more playing time. Now imagine throwing money and donations into that mix. That
you better get an A.
Yeah. If a teacher needs to discipline a student, but, those parents have given money. It just, the power imbalance begins with that money. So bad bill. Let's get legislators to stop it.
One of those deals again, where it's like, you see a problem, the solution, but we're doing everything to go around having to actually take care of the problem by creating these crazy little workarounds that, one, don't work, and two, are just bad policy. Here we go.
Yeah, if you want teachers to have more money, put more money in the back. Or if you want class sizes to get smaller, which is really the issue, the biggest issue now are the resources and getting the class sizes down. That's per pupil expenditure, and we're 46th or 47th in the nation. So the only way to fix that is put more money into the budget, and we have a budget surplus.
Yes, we do.
Or I don't know if it's a surplus, but we have 1.1 billion more than last year.
And our revenues are and our state revenues are still significantly over where they were a year ago. So we got some money.
So you dug into another editorial that the board wanted to talk on was the gas prices, which we never really dealt with before, but our Senator Langford, Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen have come out blaming the Biden administration for the high gas prices. So we felt like we needed to address it. And you did the digging on that. What are sort of like basically the president doesn't control gas prices. So explain to the people what does.
So not quite, somewhere between 55 and 60% of what affects gas prices is the price of oil. And the other things that affect it, is the taxes that you have to pay on, like highway taxes, transportation taxes that go on every gallon of gas you buy, the cost of distribution, the cost of refining, and all that kind of stuff. There is very little any president has been able to do to affect gas prices. And as you can see, even with the amount of oil that we're releasing out of the strategic reserve, mostly oil has stayed up. It's gone away from the peak that we saw after the embargo of Russian oil that we had and a lot of other countries had. But oil is a global phenomenon. It's not a domestic thing. The prices are set according to a global market. So if there is a hurricane that strikes in the Gulf, the Gulf of Mexico, and starts shutting down rigs around Houston and southern Louisiana coast, that's going to affect the price of oil. If there's an oil producer that is mired in warfare, that's going to affect their ability to produce, strangles output. Maybe there's some people in OPEC that are going to choke back oil production just so they can have some higher prices. All of these things are in the mix, and none of those things have anything to do with a single stroke of the pen that happens in the White House. Mm-hmm. So now Joe Biden is not new to taking criticism for this. I mean, same things were levied at Barack Obama. Same things were levied at George W. Bush at different times when gas prices spiked because of things that were kind of beyond their control. But that's the parlor game that we play, especially as an election rolls around, even if it's just a midterm. Someone wants to take the blame. We see the "I did this" stickers on gas pumps. But the reality that we have right now is the pandemic shut a lot of refining down. When demand went back up, refining could not keep pace. Supply chain issues are creating problems in terms of oil rigs, trucks, drivers, workers in the fields who can work at these places. So that slows things down and keeps prices high. The demand continues to rise as economies start coming back. And we've got a war that's affecting a place that controls 10% of the world's oil supply. So, I mean, I guess you can blame whoever, but we've got very few levers that the federal government can pull to get these things under control out of the side of that strategic reserve. Mm-hmm. We could ramp up production, but the government doesn't control Exxon or Chevron or anything like that. They do. They might say, well, you could be better towards us on regulations or leases or something like that. 9,000 federal public lands leases that are waiting to be explored that are not. None of those may pan out. But on the other hand, you'll never know until you drill. Mm-hmm. If you leave them undrilled, what is their production? 0 barrels of oil a day. So, and just beside the fact that most of the oil that is produced in the United States is actually extracted from private land. So, whatever.
Well, and then the other thing we addressed an issue that was closer to home. It was the Tulsa right now. We're getting ready to implement cameras in public spaces, and the board's all for that because you go into a middle income, wealthier income neighborhood, everyone has a camera, a Ring. So if you're stealing something off a porch or you're vandalizing something, I mean, those neighborhoods light up with all the videos. So yes, lower income, but lower income neighborhoods don't have that, and so the crime that's committed in lower income areas, the idea of leveling the playing field by using strategically placed cameras in public places is something the board is on board with, because you can shoot photos in public. The only thing that we have concerns with is that the sheriff's department's developing its own program, the police department's developing its own program, and we've seen how these systems, whether it's 911 or other types of things, that when all these different jurisdictions come up with their own thing, it ends up in the long run causing a disjointed, confusing, bureaucratic, kind of nightmare for citizens because they don't know who's doing what. So we're just really want to encourage, this is the time now for all these law enforcement agencies to get together and come up with like a cohesive vision, a cohesive policies that are the same. And just so the public can understand what is this going to be used for? And that's where the cameras are located, which the mayor and the police chief Wendell said that the locations of the cameras will be known, that they will be marked, and that the images will not be used for things like tracking speeds or repossessions. So, that they will adhere to the open records laws, because whenever we talk about images, transparency is part of that. So we will expect, and I think the board was pretty adamant about that. But that was the other editorial that we kind of tackled this week on that. So the other thing coming up is you have an interesting column, and it deals with this budget that we have. Oklahoma's in a great position. So what's the nut graph? What's the headline on your column this weekend?
We've got two paths we can take that will take us toward being top 10, or at least moving that direction. One of them is tax cuts. The other one is betting on ourselves. And with all these new revenues that we got coming in. So you're gonna have to read to find out which one of those is. Hey, I love a low tax bill myself. But we take a little bit of a dive into that.
But is it worth it?
We
have a couple of really interesting columns this weekend. One is by a Tulsa business consultant, Shelley Academy. She was featured on a panel discussion that I found interesting. The Oklahoma Policy Institute did a research project a while back on the juvenile courts fees and fines and its effect on families, and how basically it saddles debt on these kids needing a second chance and the families that are struggling. And she lived that experience, and she gives a very interesting first person narrative about how broken that system is. And she experienced it in all sorts of ways. And so I would recommend, if you want to know more about what it's like to go through that with a kid, read that. And so it was fascinating. And the recommendations coming out of that report is that they just need to eliminate these fees and fines. And there are other better ways to approach this. And it should be more of a rehabilitative system, but it's not. It's being very punitive on families in particular. So and the Community Advisory Board column this weekend is by Dr. Jabran Pasha, who's a fabulous writer. But he's sort of you can tell he's bothered by some of the legislation coming out that will harm children, and he writes a little bit about equity and how seeing some of the, particularly for LGBTQ kids, that he thinks some of this pushback is, like we were talking earlier, is a fear of losing power, a fear of equity. His argument is basically, equity does not mean you're giving up power. It bolsters everybody. So he writes a very compelling column. And then mine is it gets a little, I think you read it. I talk a little bit about my kids and faith, and I've got two teenagers that are, we grew up, I took them to church. I am a person of faith, but kids look at things differently. And there are all these kind of research out about youth and kids, and I've seen that in my own. It's interesting. There was a really good project at Springtide, and they have some new research on how religious kids are, how that plays out, and how it intersects with their lives. And it's fascinating. Most kids view themselves as religious, but they don't turn to their religion in times of need. And I found that compelling. Just that they don't believe in the institutions that are offering. They're not offering what they need. And so I see my own kids sort of struggling with that. One questioning the whole faith. Another is, she's so, my daughter, she's very devout. She's full of spirituality, but she hasn't quite found a home yet. And I thought it would bother me, but I just look at it. I just sat down and really thought about it. And that's the Easter Sunday effect, I think, on us. And it is Easter Sunday this weekend. So, so happy Easter.
Happy Easter. And it's what's interesting about that is what your kids are doing right now is actually something of has its basis in scriptures a little bit, talking about working out your faith.
Well, yeah,
That's
and
what they're doing.
I've like I say, other parents. I think parents always want their kids to follow what they did, and my kids are on a different path. And I kind of got to a point where you can't force religion on someone. And my kids are old enough to understand their beliefs, and I'm here to guide them. I'm here to support them. And I kind of go back to my dad had told me years ago. He was a Baptist. My mom's Catholic. He just said, I don't care what faith you are, what religion you are, just believe in something bigger in yourself. And what the studies are showing are a lot of kids are believing in that. So it's a good sign. Kids are seeking, they're asking questions, they're just looking for something. But also Passover is going on and Ramadan. So everyone enjoy whatever holiday you want, or non-holiday, no judgment, So anyway, any last words, Bob?
Well, if nothing else, see your folks, say hey over Sunday, have yourself a wonderful Sunday meal, if it's Easter or some other kind of deal. Great weekend to get outside before any kind of weather moves in. I seem to always say that. Great day, great time to get outside.
You're gonna make Tulsa healthy. That's your goal.
Get us outside, man. Some good stuff. Good stuff out there.
Well, until next week. See you later, everybody.
See ya.